Welcome back to the channel. Let me ask you something honest. Have you ever been sitting in a room where everyone around you was speaking English and felt completely frozen? You understood every word they were saying, but the moment someone turned to you and asked a simple question, your mind went completely empty. Your heart started beating fast. Your mouth opened, but nothing came out. You knew the words. You had studied them many times before, but in that moment they simply disappeared. If this has ever happened to you, I want you to know something important. You are not alone, and this is not your fault. The problem is not your intelligence. The problem is not your memory. The problem is something much simpler. And today we are going to fix it together. In this video, I will share the one habit that separates people who speak English confidently from people who study English for years but still feel afraid to open their mouths. I will share real stories of real learners. I will give you practical steps you can start using today. Even if you are a complete beginner, even if you only know a few words, even if you have tried before and felt like giving up. So please stay with me until the very end, because what you are about to hear might be the most important thing you learn about English this year. Chapter 1. Let me tell you about a young man named James was a very dedicated student. He took his English learning seriously. Every morning before work, he spent 30 minutes reading English articles. Every evening, he watched English movies and TV shows. He had notebooks filled with vocabulary lists. He had studied grammar rules carefully for almost 2 years. After all this hard work, James could read English newspapers with confidence. He could understand English podcasts clearly. He could write emails without many errors. But there was one problem that bothered him deeply. Every time he tried to speak, something strange happened. It was like an invisible wall appeared between his brain and his mouth. The words that felt so natural when he was reading or listening completely disappeared the moment he tried to say them out loud. One afternoon, his teacher asked the class a simple question. "What is your favorite place you have ever visited?" Every student raised their hand eagerly. James kept his hand on the desk. He knew exactly what he wanted to say. He had visited a beautiful mountain town 2 summers ago. He remembered every detail, the cold air, the green hills, the small wooden houses. But he could not say any of it in English. After class, his teacher, Mr. Collins, stayed behind and asked James quietly why he never participated. James looked down at his desk and said, "I am afraid of saying something wrong in front of everyone." Mr. Collins nodded slowly. Then he said something that James never forgot. He said, "James, the English inside your head is like a river that has been blocked. You have spent 2 years filling that river with water. But, you have never removed the rocks that are blocking it. Speaking every day is how you remove those rocks." That conversation changed everything for James. His teacher did not give him new grammar exercises. He did not give him a longer vocabulary list. He simply gave James one instruction: start talking about anything in any way you can. James went home that evening and sat quietly in his room. Then he looked around at everything he could see, and he started describing it out loud in English. "This is my room. My room is not very big. There is a desk near the window. There are some books on the shelf. The light is on." His sentences were short and simple. Sometimes he stopped and could not find a word. Sometimes he used the wrong word, but he kept going. And something surprising happened. The more he talked, the easier it became. After 20 minutes, something inside him had shifted. The wall was not gone completely, but there was a crack in it, and through that crack, English was finally beginning to flow. This story shows us something very important. Studying English and speaking English are two completely different skills. You can spend years becoming excellent at one without improving the other. Reading builds one kind of strength. Listening builds another kind. But speaking builds a completely different kind of strength. And the only way to build that strength is to actually speak every single day. Think about a person who wants to become a strong swimmer. They can read every book about swimming technique. They can watch every professional swimmer on video. They can study the science of water and movement. But if they never get into the water, they will never learn to swim. English is exactly like this. At some point, you must close the textbook, open your mouth, and speak. Now I know what many of you are thinking right now. But what about mistakes? What if I say something completely wrong? What if people judge me? These fears are completely normal. Every English learner feels them at some point. But here is what the most successful learners discovered. Mistakes are not the enemy of progress. Silence is the enemy of progress. Every mistake you make while speaking teaches you something that no textbook ever could. It shows you exactly where the gap is between what you know and what you can actually use. And that gap only closes through one thing, more speaking. The learners who improve the fastest are not the ones who make the fewest mistakes. They are the ones who are brave enough to keep speaking despite making them. So the next time fear tells you to stay silent, remember James, remember the river that was blocked, and start removing the rocks. But this leaves us with a very important question. What should you actually say? How do you start speaking English when you feel like you have nothing interesting to say? The answer is simpler than you might think, and we will explore it fully in the next chapter. Chapter 2. Now let me introduce you to a young woman named Emma. Emma had been studying English for 8 months. She knew around 300 words. She could understand simple sentences when people spoke slowly. But she was completely convinced that she needed to know much more before she could start practicing speaking. She told herself, when I reach 500 words, I will start speaking. Then 500 became 1,000. 1,000 became 2,000. And still she waited. Still she did not speak. One weekend her friend Sophie came to visit. Sophie had only been learning English for 5 months. Her grammar was not always correct. Her vocabulary was smaller than Emma's. But Sophie spoke freely and happily. When she did not know a word, she used a different word. When she made a mistake, she laughed and continued. Somehow, she communicated everything she wanted to say. Emma watched Sophie with a mixture of admiration and confusion. That evening, she asked Sophie a question that had been sitting in her mind all day. She said, "How are you so relaxed when you speak English? You make mistakes, but you do not seem to care." Sophie thought for a moment and then answered simply. She said, "I stopped trying to be correct and started trying to be understood." Those words stayed with Emma for a very long time. She began to understand something she had never seen clearly before. The goal of speaking is not to impress people with perfect grammar. The goal of speaking is to communicate, and communication does not require perfection. It only requires effort and honesty. The next morning, Emma decided to try something new. She sat in her bedroom. She looked around at everything she could see, and she started describing it out loud in English window. Curtain, bed, pillow, mirror, wardrobe, lamp. Then she made simple sentences. My bedroom is quiet. The curtain is yellow. The mirror is on the wall. My bed is near the window. She spoke to herself, with nobody listening, nobody judging, nobody correcting. It felt a little strange at first, but it also felt safe. And in that safe and quiet space, something wonderful happened. The English words that had been sleeping quietly in her memory started waking up. They started connecting with each other. They started forming sentences more easily than she expected. This practice of speaking to yourself is called self-talk, and it is one of the most powerful tools any English learner can use. Here is why it works so well. When you speak with other people, your brain is doing too many things at the same time. It is thinking about what to say. It is thinking about grammar rules. It is thinking about pronunciation. It is watching the other person's face for reactions. It is worrying about making mistakes. All of this mental activity slows you down. It makes speaking feel much harder than it actually is. But when you speak to yourself, all that pressure disappears. Your brain can focus on just one job: producing English sentences. And the more your brain practices doing this without pressure, the better it becomes at doing it under pressure. So when a real conversation comes, your brain is already trained. It already knows the patterns. It already knows how to search for and find the words. The real conversation becomes much less frightening. You can practice self-talk absolutely anywhere: in your bedroom when you first wake up, in the bathroom while you are getting ready, in the kitchen while you are preparing food, on the street while you are walking somewhere. Describe what you see. Describe what you are doing. Ask yourself questions and answer them. What does the sky look like today? What am I going to do this afternoon? What made me smile today? These questions are simple, but they force your brain to produce English sentences, and every sentence your brain produces makes the next one a little easier. Emma practiced self-talk every day, not in one long session, in small moments scattered throughout her ordinary day. 5 minutes here, 7 minutes there. By the end of the first month, something had quietly changed. Words that used to take her 5 seconds to find now came in 1 second. Sentences that used to feel like climbing a steep hill now felt like walking on flat ground. She was not fluent yet, but she was moving forward. And moving forward is everything. Now you might be thinking self-talk is helpful. But what about speaking with real people? How do you build enough confidence for that? The answer has everything to do with something called consistency. And in the next chapter, we are going to talk about exactly why consistency changes everything. Chapter 3. Let me tell you about a man named David. David had been trying to improve his spoken English for almost 3 years. He was not lazy. He was genuinely motivated. Every few weeks, he would decide that this time would be different. He would download a new language app. He would find a new English learning channel. He would practice speaking for several days in a row, sometimes even 2 weeks. Then life would get busy. A long day at work, a family responsibility, one evening when he was simply too tired. And the habit would quietly disappear. Getting back into it always felt harder than starting for the first time. So David would tell himself he would restart next Monday, or next month, or when things calmed down a little. But things never really calmed down. 3 years passed, and David felt like he was standing in exactly the same place he had been standing at the beginning. Then one evening, a neighbor invited him to join a small informal English conversation group. Just 5 people meeting online once a week. David almost said no, but something made him agree. At his first meeting, he was very nervous. His hands felt slightly cold. He was certain he would say something embarrassing. But something unexpected happened. He looked around the group and realized that everyone was nervous. Everyone made mistakes. The person who had been learning for 4 years made mistakes. The person who had visited England made mistakes, but nobody stopped. Nobody corrected anyone harshly. Everyone simply kept talking and kept listening. David attended every week after that. In the beginning, he said very little. A few short sentences, simple answers to simple questions. But week by week, he said a little more. Then, one day, his company asked him to give a short presentation in English to a visiting international team. David felt his stomach drop when he heard this news. He spent 2 weeks preparing. He practiced in his car during his morning drive. He practiced while cooking in the evenings. He practiced in front of his bathroom mirror. The day of the presentation arrived. David stood up. He felt his heart beating fast, but he began speaking. Were there moments when he searched for a word? Yes. Was his pronunciation perfect? No. But did everyone in the room understand him clearly? Absolutely yes. When he sat down afterward, his colleague leaned over and said, "That was really good, David." David smiled quietly. Not because the presentation was perfect, but because he had done something he would have said was impossible 3 years ago. And that felt extraordinary. David's story teaches us something very important about consistency. Consistency does not mean practicing for 2 hours every day. It means practicing every day, even for 5 minutes, even for 3 minutes, even for just 2 or 3 sentences spoken out loud before you fall asleep. Because your brain does not care how long your practice session is. Your brain cares about how often it sees something, how often it uses something. A small daily practice sends your brain the same message every single day. English is part of my life. Keep the connections strong, keep the pathways open, and your brain listens. So how do you build a consistent daily habit? The simplest answer is this. Attend English practice to something you already do every day without thinking. Do you make coffee or tea every morning? Speak English while you do it. Do you walk somewhere every day? Speak English during that walk. Do you wash dishes every evening? Describe your thoughts in English while you wash. You are not creating extra time in your already busy day. You are simply using the time you already have more wisely. Start with 5 minutes. Not 30, not an hour. Just 5, because 5 minutes every single day for 1 year is more than 30 hours of speaking practice. 30 hours that most learners never get because they are always waiting for the perfect moment to start the perfect routine. The perfect moment does not exist. The only moment that exists is right now with 5 minutes, with simple sentences, with whatever English you already have today. What happens after months of this kind of practice? What does speaking English start to feel like when it becomes a genuine part of your everyday life? The answer is truly inspiring, and that is what we will discover in our final chapter, Chapter 4. I want to tell you about a woman named Rachel. Rachel started learning English as an adult. She was 32 years old. She had a full-time job and 2 young children at home. Time was something she had very little of. People around her were not encouraging. Some said, "It is much harder to learn a language when you are older." Some said, "You need many hours of study every day to make real progress." Some said, "Do not expect too much." Rachel listened to all of this, and then she quietly decided to ignore all of it. She made one simple promise to herself: 10 minutes of English speaking practice every day. That was it. No long study sessions, no complicated programs. Just 10 minutes of speaking English every single day. She talked to herself while doing the laundry. She described what she saw outside her window during her lunch break. She narrated her thoughts in English for a few minutes before sleeping. The first month was genuinely difficult. She felt slow. She felt frustrated sometimes. There were days when she wondered if any of it was actually helping, but she had made a promise to herself. 10 minutes every day, no exceptions. So she kept going. The second month felt slightly different. Small things started changing. Sometimes a sentence came out without her having to think about it first. Sometimes she heard an English word and understood it immediately, without needing to translate. Sometimes she caught herself thinking something in English without even trying. These were quiet little moments, easy to miss. But they were signs of something important happening deep inside her brain. By the fifth month, something shifted much more noticeably. Rachel had a phone call with a customer service representative from another country. The entire call had to be in English. She had been dreading this kind of situation for years. But when the call came, something surprising happened. The words came naturally. She asked questions clearly. She understood the answers without needing them repeated. She explained her problem simply, and the person on the other end understood perfectly. When the call ended, she stood in her kitchen for a moment. Then she started laughing, not because anything was funny, but because she suddenly understood something. She had just had a real conversation entirely in English. And not once during the entire call had she felt afraid. This is what daily speaking practice quietly builds, not just language ability, but the deep, unshakable confidence that comes from actually using the language in real situations again and again. There are specific changes you will notice as your practice continues. The first change is speed. In the beginning, speaking feels very slow. You pause between every few words. You search for sentences like you are looking for something in a dark room. But over time, the pauses become shorter. The searching becomes faster. Your brain has practiced these patterns so many times that it starts working automatically. Like driving a familiar road, you stop thinking about which turns to take. You simply drive. The second change is the disappearance of translation. At the beginning, most learners think in their first language and then translate everything into English. This is slow and exhausting. But after months of daily speaking practice, something wonderful happens. You start thinking directly in English. You see something beautiful, and your brain immediately produces English words to describe it. You feel something strongly, and English words come naturally to express it. You do not choose for this to happen. It simply begins happening. Because English has become a natural part of how your brain processes and understands the world around you. The third change is the most important one. The fear becomes very small. The fear of making mistakes, the fear of being judged, the fear of not finding the right word at the right moment. These fears that once felt enormous and impossible slowly shrink, not because you became perfect, but because you proved to yourself hundreds of times that imperfect English still works. That mistakes do not end conversations, that people care far more about what you are trying to say than about how perfectly you are saying it. And that proof, built through hundreds of small speaking moments, is the most powerful confidence builder that exists in the entire world. Now, let me give you the simplest possible daily plan. Every morning, spend 5 minutes describing what your day is going to look like. What will you do? Where will you go? How are you feeling about the day ahead? Every afternoon, notice one interesting thing that happened. Say 3 sentences about it in English, out loud even if just to yourself. Every evening, ask yourself one simple question in English and answer it honestly. What is one thing I am grateful for today? That is the entire plan. 3 small moments, a few minutes total, but practiced every day without stopping. These three small moments will build something remarkable over time. A brain that is comfortable producing English. A mouth that knows how to form English sentences naturally. A confidence built not from studying, but from doing. I want to leave you with one final thought before this video ends. Rachel was told she was too old to learn properly. David was trapped in a cycle of starting and stopping. Emma was waiting for a vocabulary number that would never feel large enough. James was standing behind a wall of silence. But all four of them found their way to confident English speaking through exactly the same door. They opened their mouths. They kept them open, day after day, sentence after sentence, mistake after mistake. And slowly, beautifully, the English came. It will come for you too. You do not need to be young. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to wait until everything feels ready. You just need to start talking today, right now, with whatever English you already have, because every single word you speak today is one step closer to the English speaker you are becoming. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel. And now I have one question for you. What is one sentence you are going to say out loud in English today? Just one sentence. Brout it in the comments below. I would love to read every single one. Thank you so much for watching. Keep speaking, keep growing, and I will see you in the next video.